Hey everyone, so today I'm going to teach you how to turn any column in Elementor into an almost clickable-like button, which will include a link that can direct your user to any page on your website. So no matter where I looked, on YouTube or on Google or on forums, I just couldn't find the solution that I was looking for. So I figured it out myself, and I just wanted to make a little video on it in the hope that it will help someone else wanting to do the same thing. So you can see here, for my categories of my personal blog, which I'm building at the moment, I have these almost button-like features, but they're not buttons, they're actually columns, which include a tiny bit of CSS code, which I'll include in the description. And it allows for these much more customizable buttons, which actually include a clickable area where you can direct your user to another page of your website. So yeah, let's get started. We are going to want to use inner sections to achieve this look. So we add in an inner section here, and by default it will add in 2, which is good in my case as I want a 2x3 grid. So this part of the button here is actually a heading widget. So if we go ahead and just add that in, and then for the purposes of replication, we'll go with environment. And then the emoji is nothing fancy. It doesn't use any plugin or any code or anything. It's just as simple as going on this website, which I'll include in the description, and finding a relevant emoji. So for the environment, we can just go with a globe emoji here. And then it's just as simple as copying it and pasting it across. So to get the title to sit below the emoji, just put in the paragraph function. I'm sure there's another way you can do this, but this is the one I figured out. It was easiest. And then I'll center that. So yeah, now the next stage is to add a border, which will allow your inner section to start looking like a button. So if we go on our column within the inner section, into style, border, we want a solid border, let's say with a border width of 1 and a border radius of, let's say, 10. So we can call this black here, and then we can create another one here. So here we've got science, and we'll find a relevant emoji for that. Let's go with the microscope again. Find that, copy and paste it across, and add it in. So let's center it. So the issue you'll start to see now is that when I add another border, they're right up against each other, which doesn't look too good. So what you can see here is these are starting to look like buttons, but they're right up against each other. So to create this gap, like you see here, we just want to add a margin to those columns. So if we go within the column, advanced, margin, and 10, and you'll want to do that for each of your buttons. Cool. So I'll speed the video up and essentially duplicate this, and then we can go on to the next stage. Now we have duplicated all of them, and I sped up the video just so you didn't have to watch me do that. But now we've got our sets of buttons. So the next thing we need to do is to create a hover effect like a button would have. So in the case here, I have chosen it to be grey, and also to move up slightly on hover. So this is where the CSS code comes in. So to start implementing this CSS code to make these hover effects happen, we're first going to want to go into the column. So it's important to make the distinction between the title here and the column. So to get these hover effects, it's important we're within column, advanced, custom CSS, and then we paste in that code that I included in the description. So the first part of this code is what gives the button that color effect on hover, and it is this hex code here, which correlates to a color that will give it that gray. So if you wanted to change the color, you just change this part of the code. The Elementor widget wrap bit is what restricts that color to be within the border radius rather than the whole column itself. The second part of this code here is what gives the lift to the button. So you can change how much that lifts with this here and the amount of time it takes to rise up and back down with the seconds here. The next stage here is to add a link to the title and then spread it across the whole column so that the whole column becomes a clickable button. So this is where the next bit of CSS code, which I've included in the description, comes along. So within your title or heading, so it's important to make the distinction between column and heading here. So within your heading, you can add your link in. So in my case, I'll add my URL, followed by my category, and then specifically the environment category here. So once we do that, you can then see it becomes clickable with the link. But the problem is, once we move out of this title, you can see this now becomes unclickable. So if a user was to click on this part of our button that we've created, they won't be able to follow the link through. So the next bit of CSS code essentially spreads this clickable area across the whole button. So within our heading, we go within Advanced, Custom CSS, and copy it in. Again, I have included that in the description so you won't have to write it out. But once we've implemented that, the whole button becomes clickable. So you can see here in this example in science, I've added the link into the science heading, but once we move out of that, we lose the clickable area. So we just want to implement that code, which we included in environment in science. So once that's now been added to each of our buttons, we can then go ahead and publish the website, and then we'll preview it. And just as an example, we'll follow through to the environment category button, which I've created here. So once we click on this, that will then redirect us to the environment category page on my website. So yeah, this is the first time I've ever done any videos like this, and I'm currently building my personal blog. I'm coming across these sorts of issues and kind of figuring out how to do them myself and then leaving it there, but I thought it might be super helpful for someone to come across this video who wants to do the same thing I did. So sorry if the video is a bit jumpy, it's the first one I've ever made, so yeah, thanks for watching, and yeah, hopefully it's helpful.